sports.
Hey, Cam.
Hey, Pete.
Cam Stuart of Locked On Baylor fame. Also a member of the Rogue Media family. He's got wonderful pipes that he uses to call football in the fall, right? I mean,
Sure, yeah.
and he's live from Chicago right now.
Yeah.
Is Sean McDonough the best play-by-play guy ever?
He's on the Mount Rushmore. I mean, he's still the best right now. Like, for sure. It honestly, it goes between him and Al Michaels for me. And I've heard Al Michaels is a great guy. Talk to Sean McDonough. He does seem like a great guy. Sean can do it all, man. He can do any sport. Like him and Al can do any sport, any level. And most importantly, when you hear that voice, it's a big game.
Yes.
Right? Like Al, McDonough, Buck maybe more than anybody ever. Nance. Like you hear that and you're like, oh, okay. Like this is a big deal. This is a big event. McDonough is, I mean, yeah, he's pretty great, man.
Can you turn him up a little bit in the headphones? So here is why I was like so convinced of this last night. I was like transitioning rooms and I was like, oh, like I got to turn the TV off. And, now it's a goddamn,
of course. Yeah.
now it's a goddamn rigmarole to get the TV and the YouTube TV. So I'm like, let me just, as I transition rooms, I'm just going to put on Sirius and listen to the ESPN radio call. Dude, he was so good. I was like, and to me, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, because you do play-by-play as well. Radio, I think, almost takes more talent than calling a game on TV. It does. TV takes, I think there's more pressure to certain aspects of television, for sure. Mm-hmm. But like that radio call that Sean McDonough, I mean, it was just kind of like, Irish are in a hurry. Well, they have got a lot to do right now. And then like they score a touchdown. Don't hang up the phone on the Irish just yet. Just all this stuff. And the way he describes the action on the field, I was reminded as to why he was so good and almost reminded at how a play-by-play guy and his skill set is not on full display on television, no matter how big the game, right?
Yeah.
Like that radio call is something special.
He's pretty great, man. And what I also loved about him in his short live tenure as the Monday Night Football voice, which should have been longer.
One of only 5 men ever to do it. And Keith Jackson kind of doesn't count. He did 1 season. Go ahead.
Yeah. Was he would be critical of the refs. And like I'm sure that's why he wasn't the voice for very long. But he was like not afraid to be like, that seemed like a bad call. Like we can question coaches' decisions as broadcasters, but we can't criticize the refs at the NFL level. So I like that about him. And when you were describing the things he kind of peppers in there in the radio broadcast, it reminded me of probably my favorite Sean McDonough moment, which is, I should have got the clip for you. This is on me, Pete. I should have got the clip for you. But it's 2010, Memorial Day, NCAA lacrosse championships. You knew I was busting this out. So it had been on ESPN for a couple of years, the Final Four of lacrosse, but it's a fast-growing sport. And the whole time, McDonough is really leaning into, it was a David versus Goliath matchup. It was Notre Dame versus Duke. Duke was one of the best teams in the country. Notre Dame had kind of come out of nowhere. And this is only a couple years after the Duke scandal. And so he's talking about these Duke seniors and what they had to go through as freshmen and their season being given up. And now here they are about to finally win the first championship. And it goes to overtime. And the whole build up to overtime, he's talking about that. He's like, for Notre Dame, the Cinderella story, no one expected them to be here. And for Duke, while one of the best teams this year, they've got this storybook ending waiting to be written. And they've missed out. They've made the Final Four 3 straight years, but they haven't won the championship. And they go to the opening faceoff of overtime of the championship game. He knows he's getting as big an audience for lacrosse as you're going to get all year. And he takes a moment to say, and of course, only the wings can move out of the box when the faceoff, like he's describing the rules of the faceoff as it's coming in. And it just flows seamlessly into one cleanly by Costabile, charging towards the net, and he scores! It is a storybook ending for the Duke seniors. And he just rolls right into it. It's so good. It's so effortless that you can go from you could have not watched any lacrosse ever.
Yes. Yeah.
And you can go into that 30 seconds and realize how cool that was, how unexpected that is. Like the guy wins the faceoffs and goes right down and scores. And to know what that moment was, all of it, the rules, the moment, like all in one. You could not watch a lacrosse game ever and go into that 30 seconds because Sean McDonough is calling it.
And it's totally seamless and it's total poetry.
Yes.
And he's not trying to do that. You know what I mean? It's what he does. It's not like there's not an overarching emphasis like in your face with this.
Correct. Which I think his replacement on Monday Night Football does a lot of. And that was Tessitore. And also that's the other thing. Sean McDonough is really good. And like you used the term poetic there, but it never feels like the Sean McDonough show.
No.
I watched an ESPN game with Tessitore, and it feels like the Joe Tessitore show. And he's not the only one. Plenty of announcers like that.
Yeah.
But with Buck and McDonough and Nance, like it doesn't feel like it's their show. And what I also really like about McDonough is he remembers where he comes from. Shouts that out a lot. In fact, I bring back to the 2010 semifinals. Max Quinzani scored the game-winning goal for Duke. And whenever he would talk about Max Quinzani, he'd be like, from Duxbury on the lovely South Shore of Massachusetts, which is like 2 towns over from where Sean McDonough grew up in Hingham. So whenever, and now he does ESPN hockey. So that comes up a lot. Like guys from within about a half hour of where both Sean and I grew up.
There's one thing about him that frustrates me a little bit.
Please. The lack of hair? We can't control that.
No. And it's not his fault.
Okay.
I feel like he's the only, and I'd have to look at a list of guys, but he really legitimized the Syracuse like Newhouse stuff.
That is, that's a fair point, man.
He's a very real play-by-play guy. A lot of guys that came out of the Syracuse are literally like they're just so cookie cutter.
Yep.
They don't even know.
Blowhards, man.
They're young guys who don't know what they don't know, but they try to be somebody that they're not. And you can smell it after an hour of watching a game. And look, some of those, every once in a while, a guy like that, and I'm not even sure where this guy went to school, but you get a Mike Monaco, who's just unbelievable.
He's hurting today, by the way.
What's wrong? Oh, why? Because
he went to Notre Dame.
Oh, he did? Okay.
Yeah.
Monaco is like amazing. But so you get what I'm saying about that. All right. I only have you for a certain amount of time here, so I got a bunch I want to cover.
Okay.
You're a student of sports media.
Yeah, unfortunately.
And that's one of the many reasons I appreciate you like you do. But you've got an old soul, and you really do have history with all these broadcasts and broadcasters. Is it different now? Help me out. If you watch a halftime show at the Super Bowl or the national championship, like there's Nick Saban and there's Desmond Howard, and they are giving like lightning takes. Like they are not afraid. Like Pat Riley was on Dan Le Batard a few weeks ago, and Pat Riley talked about how he was not a good analyst because he didn't want to go after coaches or players because he knew he wanted to get back in.
Which happens a lot more often than most people think.
But it doesn't happen as much anymore.
Right.
Because I think guys are so willing to go there, and there's so much noise. If you want to be relevant or keep your job at all, you have got to say something. Mm-hmm. Have you noticed that?
Yes. Yeah. Because when I see across all sports media, whether it be, studio shows, radio shows, podcasts, like there's 2 things that I think actually, and it's the Barstool method that I'm going with here, and why that became so successful in chain sports media. Because really, when you boil down to it, there's 2.5 things that you want from whomever you're listening to. Do you want them to be passionate, and you want them to be funny? And the other half thing is they gotta know what they're talking about to some extent, right? You can't just roll in here like Pete's not doing a lacrosse show. You need to, those 2.5 things, man. And so much of what I see on TV specifically doesn't have either of those things. They're not funny, they're not charismatic, and they're just throwing out just bullshit takes. And I'm like, you don't even believe that. Or in sports talk radio, you're trying to do this rant, and like, I know you don't care about this. You were in there plenty in that studio when I was doing my rants. Did you ever think, No, this is bullshit. Like he doesn't care.
Yeah, no, I figured you believed all that. It was a side of you I'd never seen before.
Right. And so when you get Saban and Desmond Howard on there, like no offense to those guys, they're not funny. Charismatic in some degrees, I guess, but then I see them rattling off these takes, and I'm like, you don't even believe this. Like you don't even care about this. Yeah. And so that's where you're having to kind of make up entertainment in the aggregate. You're not an entertaining person for this. And so you need some sort of copy to be entertaining, right? You need some sort of material that you think people will find entertaining. And those are two different things, being entertaining and creating it in the aggregate. Did that sound douchey enough for you?
That was great. It was really good. I think this is something from broadcaster to broadcaster. I heard something recently. I don't know if it was Joe Buck who said it or, no. It was Boog Shambi. And he talked about how, look, man, like on a Tuesday night, like he might be watching something totally different than the Marlins or the Cubs and he talked about like, we want our play-by-play guys, or he wasn't saying we, but I think it was whoever was interviewing him was saying this, like, we want you guys to have like pop culture knowledge. Like that's why Joe Buck's great, because he's kind of funny. And it's very clear that this guy lives a life outside of sports, and the St. Louis Cardinals. And that's important, I think, for people watching games. All right, hold on. I'm going to move you along here. Okay. Has Baylor basketball hit rock bottom this season? And rock bottom, hitting rock bottom now could be a good thing because now they go back up. Like, I need a vibe check with you on this.
I hope so. But I don't think we can say that for sure because we do have, a month and a half left in the regular season here. And the problem, if you want to say it's a problem for Baylor, is that their next 3 games are winnable. All right. You got Kansas State at home tomorrow. They're worse than TCU. And then you've got Utah on the road playing some better basketball recently, but that's a team you beat by 25 points. And then you've got a tough road matchup, but against BYU, a team that's scuffling, a team that's not as hot as your last tough road matchup, which was Arizona. Arizona was on fire going into that game. Yeah. So all 3 of those games are winnable. And I don't think they'll win all 3, and there'll be plenty of excuses as to why, which is going to get bothersome. But I think there's absolutely opportunity in those next 3 that if you don't put out a good performance, that would be rock bottom. But I've said this on Locked On. Like, I don't know about you, Pete. My opinion on TCU did not change after Sunday. I don't think that's a very good basketball team in this.
It's not, but it's a Big 12 in-conference opponent, and they're not as
sure. And that's why you roll the basketballs out. But my opinion didn't change on TCU. It got lower of Baylor after that game. I mean, 2 things you got to do. With Baylor's just not coming together right now. I don't want to say they're not talented, but it's clearly it's not a small sample size, and it has not come together. And by the time you hit the latter half of January, you have to wonder if it's going to come together this year. And so when you're that disadvantaged, let's say, you've got to beat the teams that you're better than, and you've got to win your home games. And that was 0 for 2 on Sunday. You're better than TCU. And this was not one of Jamie's best teams. And you lost to him at home in a game that you had in control at halftime. It's not good, but I'm hoping that it's rock bottom. I'm hoping that's as bad as it gets.
Cam Stuart, the Cam Show, coming up next on the Rogue Media Network. Cam, that was a great segment. I was talking to our boss, Corey, and I was like, you guys can say whatever you want. Cam and I make magic, dude, when we get together.
I'm telling you.
That's all I'm saying.
I could have kept going with the CJ Costabile call. Hell yeah. We're just talking about Notre Dame national championship losses.
My favorite, Pete's not doing a lacrosse show. He's not.
He's not. Pete ain't doing the Flyers, man.
Cam coming up next at 11 a.m. Cam, thank you so much. You can catch him Locked On Baylor, but stay tuned. You can catch him on the Rogue Media Network. Cam Show coming up next. The Pete Souza Show. That is all for today. We got a big guest coming tomorrow. We'll talk to you about it when he actually walks through those doors. But Larry Bird's not walking through those doors anytime soon. All right, we'll see you tomorrow.
It's the Pete Souza Show. Sports.
We definitely love our relationship and love Extra Co. It's been an